Section 1 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by MoonLylith. The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. Section 1. Front Matter, Proem, The City of Dreadful Night, Parts 1 through 10. No tears of mine shall fall upon thy face. Whatever city thou hast gained at last, better it is than that where thy feet passed so many times. Such weary nights and days. Those journeying feet knew all its inmost ways, where shapes and shadows of dread things were cast. There moved thy soul, profoundly dark and vast. There did thy voice its hymn of anguish raise. Thou wouldst have left that city of great night, yet traveled its dark mazes, all in vain. But one way leads from it, which, found aright, who goes by it may not return again. There didst thou grope thy way through thy long pain. Hast thou, outside, found any world of light? Philip Bork Marston. Proem. O antique fables, beautiful and bright, and joyous with the joyous youth of yore. O antique fables, for a little light of that which shineth in you evermore, to cleanse the dimness from our weary eyes, and bathe our old world with a new surprise of golden dawn, entrancing sea and shore. We stagger under the enormous weight of all the heavy ages piled on us, with all their grievous wrongs inveterate, and all their disenchantments dolorous, and all the monstrous tasks they have bequeathed, and we are stifled with the airs they breathed, and read in theirs our dooms calamitous. Our world is all stripped naked of their dreams. No deities in sky or sun or moon, no nymphs in woods and hills and seas and streams. Mere earth and water, air and fire their boon. No God in all our universe we trace, no heaven in the infinitude of space, no life beyond death, coming not too soon. Our souls are stripped of their illusions sweet, our hopes, at best, in some far future years. For others, not ourselves, whose bleeding feet wander this rocky waste, where broken spears and bleaching bones lie scattered on the sand, who know we shall not reach the promised land. Perhaps a mirage, glistening through our tears. And, if there be this promised land indeed, our children's heritage. Oh, what a prodigal waste of precious seed, of myriad lives from age to age, of woes and agonies and blank despairs through countless cycles, that some fortunate heirs may enter and conclude the pilgrimage. But if it prove a mirage after all, our last illusion leaves us wholly bare, to bruise against fate's adamantine wall, consumed or frozen in the pitiless air. In all our world, beneath, around, above, only one refuge, solace, triumph, love, sole star of light in infinite black despair. O antique fables, beautiful and bright, and joyous with the joyous youth of yore. O antique fables, for a little light of that which shineth in you evermore, to cleanse the dimness from our weary eyes, and bathe our old world with a new surprise of golden dawn entrancing sea and shore. January 1882.
Per me si va nella città dolente, Dante. Poi di tanto adoprar, di tanti moti d'ogni celeste, ogni terrena cosa, girando senza posa per tornar sempre là donde son mosse, uso alcuno, alcun frutto indovinar non so. Sola nel mondo eterna a cui si volve ogni creata cosa, in te, morte, si posa nostra ignuda natura, lieta no, ma sicura dell'antico dolor, però che ser beato nega ai mortali e nega a morti il fatto. Leopardi.
The City of Dreadful Night, 1870-1874. Proem. Lo, thus, as prostrate, in the dust I write, my heart's deep languor and my soul's sad tears. Yet, why evoke the spectres of black night to blot the sunshine of exultant years? Why disinter dead faith from mouldering hidden? Why break the seals of mute despair unbidden, and wail life's discords into careless ears? Because a cold rage seizes one at whiles, to show the bitter old and wrinkled truth, stripped naked of all vesture that beguiles, false dreams, false hopes, false masks, and modes of youth, because it gives some sense of power and passion in helpless impotence, to try to fashion our woe in living words, howe'er uncouth. Surely I write not for the hopeful young, or those who deem their happiness of worth, or such as pasture and grow fat among the shows of life, and feel nor doubt nor dearth, or pious spirits with a God above them to sanctify and glorify and love them, or sages who foresee a heaven on earth. For none of these I write, and none of these could read the writing if they deigned to try. So may they flourish in their due degrees on our sweet earth and in their unplaced sky. If any cares for the weak words here written, it must be someone desolate, fate-smitten, whose faith and hope are dead, and who would die. Yes, here and there some weary wanderer in that same city of tremendous night will understand the speech and feel a stir of fellowship in all disastrous fight. I suffer mute and lonely, yet another uplifts his voice to let me know a brother travels the same wild path, though out of sight. O sad fraternity! Do I unfold your dolorous mysteries shrouded from of yore? Nay, be assured, no secret can be told to any who divined it not before. None initiate by many a presage will comprehend the language of the message, although proclaimed aloud for evermore. 1. The city is of night, perchance of death, but certainly of night. For never there can come the lucid morning's fragrant breath after the dewy dawning's cold gray air. The moon and stars may shine with scorn or pity. The sun has never visited that city, for it dissolveth in the daylight fair, dissolveth like a dream of night away, though present in distempered gloom of thought and deadly weariness of heart all day. But when a dream night after night is brought throughout a week, and such weeks few or many recur each year for several years, can any discern that dream from real life in aught? For life is but a dream, whose shapes return, some frequently, some seldom, some by night and some by day, some night and day. We learn, the while all change, and many vanish quite in their recurrence, with recurrent changes, a certain seeming order. Where this ranges, we count things real, such as memories might. A river girds the city west and south, the main north channel of a broad lagoon, regurging with the salt tides from the mouth. Waste marshes shine and glitter to the moon. For leagues, then moorland black, then stony ridges, great piers and causeways, many noble bridges, connect the town in islet suburbs strewn. Upon an easy slope it lies at large, and scarcely overlaps the long curved crest, which swells out 2 leagues from the river marge. A trackless wilderness rolls north and west, savannas, savage woods, enormous mountains, bleak uplands, black ravines with torrent fountains, and eastward rolls the shipless sea's unrest. The city is not ruinous, although great ruins of an unremembered past, with others of a few short years ago more sad, are found within its precincts vast. The street lamps always burn, but scarce a casement in house or palace front, from room to basement, doth glow or gleam athwart the murk air cast. The street lamps burn amidst the baleful glooms, amidst the soundless solitudes immense of ranged mansions, dark and still as tombs. The silence which benumbs or strains the sense, fulfills with awe the soul's despair and weeping. Myriads of habitants are ever sleeping, or dead, or fled from nameless pestilence. Yet in some necropolis you find perchance one mourner to 1,000 dead. So there, worn faces that look deaf and blind, like tragic masks of stone, with wary tread, each wrapped in his own doom, they wander, or sit fordone and desolately ponder through sleepless hours with heavy, drooping head. Mature men chiefly, few in age or youth, a woman rarely, now and then a child. A child! If here the heart turns sick with ruth to see a little one from birth defiled, or lame or blind, as preordained to languish through youthless life, think how it bleeds with anguish to meet one erring in that homeless wild. They often murmur to themselves. They speak to one another seldom, for their woe broods maddening inwardly and scorns to wreak itself abroad. And if at whiles it grow to frenzy which must rave, none heeds the clamor, unless there waits some victim of like glamour to rave in turn, who lends attentive show. The city is of night, but not of sleep. Their sweet sleep is not for the weary brain. The pitiless hours like years and ages creep. A night seems termless hell. This dreadful strain of thought and consciousness which never ceases, of which some moments stupor but increases, this, worse than woe, makes wretches there insane. They leave all hope behind who enter here. One certitude, while sane, they cannot leave. One anodyne for torture and despair. The certitude of death, which no reprieve can put off long, and which, divinely tender, but waits the outstretched hand to promptly render that draught whose slumber nothing can bereave. 2. Because he seemed to walk with an intent, I followed him, who, shadow-like and frail, unswervingly, though slowly, onward went, regardless, wrapped in thought as in a veil. Thus step for step with lonely sounding feet, we traveled many a long, dim, silent street. At length he paused, a black mass in the gloom, a tower that merged into the heavy sky, around the huddled stones of grave and tomb. Some old God's acre, now corruption's sty. He murmured to himself with dull despair, here faith died, poisoned by this charnel air. Then, turning to the right, went on once more, and travelled weary roads without suspense, and reached at last a low wall's open door, whose villa gleamed beyond the foliage dense. He gazed, and muttered with a hard despair, here love died, stabbed by its own worshipped pair. Then, turning to the right, resumed his march, and travelled streets and lanes with wondrous strength, until, on stooping through a narrow arch, we stood before a squalid house at length. He gazed, and whispered with a cold despair, here hope died, starved out in its utmost lair. When he had spoken thus, before he stirred, I spoke, perplexed by something in the signs of desolation I had seen and heard in this drear pilgrimage to ruined shrines. When faith and love and hope are dead indeed, can life still live? By what doth it proceed? As whom his one intense thought overpowers, he answered coldly, take a watch, erase the signs and figures of the circling hours, detach the hands, remove the dial face, the works proceed until run down, although bereft of purpose, void of use, still go. Then, turning to the right, paced on again, and traversed squares and travelled streets whose gloom seemed more and more familiar to my ken, and reached that sullen temple of the tombs, and paused to murmur with the old despair, here faith died, poisoned by this charnel air. I ceased to follow, for the knot of doubt was severed sharply with a cruel knife. He circled thus, forever tracing out the series of the fractions left of life, perpetual recurrence in the scope of but 3 terms, dead faith, dead love, dead hope. 3. Although lamps burn along the silent streets, even when moonlight silvers empty squares, the dark holds countless lanes and close retreats. But when the night its sphereless mantle wears, the open spaces yawn with gloom abysmal. The somber mansions loom immense and dismal. The lanes are black as subterranean lairs. And soon the eye a strange new vision learns. The night remains for it as dark and dense, yet clearly in this darkness it discerns, as in the daylight with its natural sense, perceives a shade in shadow, not obscurely, pursues a stir of black in blackness surely, sees spectres also in the gloom intense. The air, too, with the silence vast and deep, becomes familiar, though unreconciled, hears breathings as of hidden life asleep, and muffled throbs as of pent passions wild. Far murmurs, speech of pity or derision, but all more dubious than the things of vision, so that it knows not when it is beguiled. No time abates the first despair and awe, but wonder ceases soon. The weirdest thing is felt least strange beneath the lawless law, where death in life is the eternal king, crushed impotent beneath this reign of terror, dazed with such mysteries of woe and error, the soul is too outworn for wondering. 4. He stood alone within the spacious square, declaiming from the central grassy mound, with head uncovered and with streaming hair, as if large multitudes were gathered round. A stalwart shape, the gestures full of might, the glances burning with unnatural light. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, all was black. In heaven, no single star, on earth, no track. A brooding hush, without a stir or note. The air so thick it clotted in my throat, and thus for hours. Then some enormous thing swooped past with savage cries and clinking wings, but I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, eyes of fire glared at me, throbbing with a starved desire. The hoarse and heavy and carnivorous breath was hot upon me from deep jaws of death. Sharp claws, swift talons, fleshless fingers cold, plucked at me from the bushes, tried to hold, but I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, lo, you there, that hillock burning with a brazen glare, those myriad dusky flames with points aglow, which writhed and hissed and darted to and fro, a Sabbath of the serpents, heaped pell-mell for devil's roll call and some fete of hell. Yet I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, meteors ran and crossed their javelins on the black sky span. The zenith opened to a gulf of flame. The dreadful thunderbolts jarred earth's fixed frame. The ground all heaved in waves of fire that surged and weltered round me, soul there unsubmerged. Yet I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, air once more, and I was close upon a wild seashore. Enormous cliffs arose on either hand. The deep tide thundered up a league broad strand. White foam belts seethed there. Wan spray swept and flew. The sky broke. Moon and stars and clouds and blue. And I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, on the left, the sun arose and crowned a broad crag cleft. There stopped and burned out black, except a rim, a bleeding, eyeless socket, red and dim, whereon the moon fell suddenly southwest, and stood above the right-hand cliffs at rest. Still I strode on austere. No hope could have no fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, from the right, a shape came slowly with a ruddy light. A woman with a red lamp in her hand, bareheaded and barefooted on that strand. Oh, desolation, moving with such grace. Oh, anguish, with such beauty in thy face. I fell, as on my bier, hope travailed. with such fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, I was twain, two selves distinct that cannot join again. One stood apart, and knew, but could not stir, and watched the other stark in swoon, and she came on, and never turned aside, between such sun and moon and roaring tide. And as she came more near, my soul grew mad with fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, hell is mild and piteous, matched with that accursed wild. A large black sign was on her breast that bowed. A broad black band ran down her snow-white shroud. That lamp she held was her own burning heart, whose blood drops trickled step by step apart. The mystery was clear. Mad rage had swallowed fear. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, by the sea, she knelt and bent above that senseless knee. Those lamp drops fell upon my white brow there. She tried to cleanse them with her tears and hair. She murmured words of pity, love, and woe. She heeded not the level rushing flow. And mad with rage and fear, I stood stone-bound, so near. As I came through the desert, thus it was. As I came through the desert, when the tide swept up to her, there, kneeling by my side, she clasped that corpse like me, and they were borne away. And this vile me was left forlorn. I know the whole sea cannot quench that heart, or cleanse that brow, or wash those two apart. They love, their doom is drear. Yet they nor hope nor fear. But I, what do I here? 5. How he arrives there, none can clearly know. Athwart the mountains and immense wild tracts, or flung a waif upon that vast sea flow, or down the river's boiling cataracts. To reach it is as dying fever-stricken. To leave it, slow, faint, birth-intense pangs quicken, and memory swoons in both the tragic acts. But being there, one feels a citizen. Escape seems hopeless to the heart forlorn. Can death in life be brought to life again? And yet, release does come. There comes a morn when he awakes from slumbering so sweetly that all the world is changed for him completely, and he is verily as if new-born. He scarcely can believe the blissful change. He weeps perchance, who wept not while accursed. Never again will he approach the range infected by what evil spell now burst. Poor wretch, who once hath paced that dolent city, shall pace it often, doomed beyond all pity, with horror ever deepening from the first. Though he possess sweet babes and loving wife, a home of peace by loyal friendships cheered, and love them more than death or happy life, they shall avail not. He must dree his weird. Renounce all blessings for that imprecation, steal forth and haunt that builded desolation of woe and terrors and thick darkness reared. 6. I sat forlornly by the riverside and watched the bridge lamps glow like golden stars above the blackness of the swelling tide, down which they struck rough gold in ruddier bars, and heard the heave and plashing of the flow against the wall a dozen feet below. Large elm trees stood along that river walk, and under one, a few steps from my seat, I heard strange voices join in stranger talk, although I had not heard approaching feet. These bodiless voices in my waking dream flowed dark words blending with the somber stream. And you have after all come back, come back. I was about to follow on your track, and you have failed. Our spark of hope is black. That I have failed is proved by my return. The spark is quenched, nor evermore will burn. But listen, and the story you shall learn. I reached the portal common spirits fear, and read the words above it, dark yet clear. Leave hope behind, all ye who enter here. And would have passed in, gratified to gain that positive eternity of pain, instead of this insufferable inane. A demon warder clutched me. Not so fast, first you leave your hopes behind. But years have passed, since I left all behind me to the last. You cannot count for hope with all your wit, this bleak despair that drives me to the pit. How could I seek to enter, void of it? He snarled, what thing is this which apes a soul, and would find entrance to our gulf of dole, without the payment of the settled toll? Outside the gate he showed an open chest. Here pay their entrance fees the souls unblessed. Cast in some hope, you enter with the rest. This is Pandora's box, whose lid shall shut, and Hellgate too, when hopes have filled it. But they are so thin that it will never glut. I stood a few steps backwards, desolate, and watched the spirits pass me to their fate, and fling off hope and enter at the gate. When one casts off a load, he springs upright, squares back his shoulders, breathes with all his might, and briskly paces forward, strong and light. But these, as if they took some burden, bowed. The whole frame sank. However strong and proud before, they crept in quite infirm and cowed. And as they passed me, earnestly from each, a morsel of his hope I did beseech, to pay my entrance. But all mocked my speech. Not one would cede a little of his store, though knowing that in instance 3 or 4 he must resign the whole for evermore. So I returned. Our destiny is fell, for in this limbo we must ever dwell, shut out alike from heaven and earth and hell. The other sighed back. Yea, but if we grope with care through all this limbo's dreary scope, we yet may pick up some minute lost hope, and sharing it between us, entrance win. In spite of fiends so jealous for a gross sin, let us without delay our search begin. 7. Some say that phantoms haunt those shadowy streets, and mingle freely there with sparse mankind, and tell of ancient woes and black defeats, and murmur mysteries in the grave enshrined. But others think them visions of illusion, or even men gone far in self-confusion, no man there being wholly sane in mind. And yet, a man who raves, however mad, who bears his heart and tells of his own fall, reserves some inmost secret, good or bad. The phantoms have no reticence at all. The nudity of flesh will blush, though tameless. The extreme nudity of bone grins shameless. The unsexed skeleton mocks shroud and pall. I have seen phantoms there that were as men, and men that were as phantoms flit and roam. Marked shapes that were not living to my ken, caught breathings acrid as with Dead Sea foam. The city rests for man so weird and awful that his intrusion there might seem unlawful, and phantoms there may have their proper home. 8. While I still lingered on that river walk and watched the tide as black as our black doom, I heard another couple join in talk and saw them to the left hand in the gloom, seated against an elm bole on the ground, their eyes intent upon the stream profound. I never knew another man on earth, but had some joy and solace in his life, some chance of triumph in the dreadful strife. My doom has been unmitigated dearth. We gaze upon the river, and we note the various vessels, large and small, that float, ignoring every wrecked and sunken boat. And yet I asked no splendid dower, no spoil of sway or fame or rank or even wealth, but homely love with common food and health, and nightly sleep to balance daily toil. This all too humble soul would arrogate unto itself some signalizing hate from the supreme indifference of fate. Who is most wretched in this dolorous place? I think myself. Yet I would rather be my miserable self than he who formed such creatures to his own disgrace. The vilest thing must be less vile than thou, from whom it had its being, God and Lord, creator of all woe and sin abhorred, malignant and implacable. I vow that not for all thy power furled and unfurled, for all the temples to thy glory built, would I assume the ignominious guilt of having made such men in such a world. As if a being, god or fiend, could reign at once so wicked, foolish, and insane as to produce men when he might refrain. The world rolls round forever like a mill. It grinds out death and life and good and ill. It has no purpose, heart or mind or will. While air of space and time's full river flow, the mill must blindly whirl, unresting so. It may be wearing out, but who can know? Man might know one thing were his sight less dim, that it whirls not to suit his petty whim, that it is quite indifferent to him. Nay, does it treat him harshly, as he saith? It grinds him some slow years of bitter breath, then grinds him back into eternal death. 9. It is full strange to him who hears and feels, when wandering there in some deserted street, the booming and the jar of ponderous wheels, the trampling clash of heavy iron-shod feet. Who in this Venice of the Black Sea rideth? Who in this city of the stars abideth, to buy or sell as those in daylight sweet? The rolling thunder seems to fill the sky as it comes on. The horses snort and strain, the harness jingles as it passes by, the hugeness of an overburthened wain. A man sits nodding on the shaft, or trudges 3 parts asleep beside his fellow drudges, and so it rolls into the night again. What merchandise? Whence, whither, and for whom? Perchance it is a fate-appointed hearse, bearing away to some mysterious tomb or limbo of the scornful universe. The joy, the peace, the life-hope, the abortions of all things good, which should have been our portions, but have been strangled by that city's curse. 10. The mansion stood apart in its own ground. In front thereof a fragrant garden lawn, high trees about it, and the whole walled round. The massy iron gates were both withdrawn, and every window of its front shed light, portentous in that city of the night. But though thus lighted, it was deadly still, as all the countless bulks of solid gloom. Perchance a congregation to fulfill solemnities of silence in this doom? Mysterious rites of dolor and despair, permitting not a breath of chant or prayer. Broad steps ascended to a terrace broad, whereon lay still light from the open door. The hall was noble, and its aspect odd, hung round with heavy black from dome to floor, and ample stairways rose to left and right, whose balustrades were also draped with night. I paced from room to room, from hall to hall, nor any life throughout the maze discerned, but each was hung with its funereal pall, and held a shrine around which tapers burned, with picture or with statue or with bust, all copied from the same fair form of dust. A woman, very young and very fair, beloved by bounteous life and joy and youth, and loving these sweet lovers, so that care and age and death seemed not for her in sooth. Alike as stars, all beautiful and bright, these shapes lit up that mausolean night. At length I heard a murmur as of lips, and reached an open oratory, hung with heaviest blackness of the whole eclipse. Beneath the dome a fuming censer swung, and one lay there upon a low white bed, with tapers burning at the foot and head. The lady of the images, supine, death still, life sweet, with folded palms she lay, and kneeling there, as at a sacred shrine, a young man, wan and worn, who seemed to pray. A crucifix of dim and ghostly white surmounted the large altar left in night. The chambers of the mansion of my heart, in every one whereof thine image dwells, are black with grief eternal for thy sake. The inmost oratory of my soul, wherein thou ever dwellest quick or dead, is black with grief eternal for thy sake. I kneel beside thee, and I clasp the cross, with eyes forever fixed upon that face, so beautiful and dreadful in its calm. I kneel here patient as thou liest there, as patient as a statue carved in stone, of adoration and eternal grief. While thou dost not awake, I cannot move, and something tells me thou wilt never wake, and I alive feel turning into stone. Most beautiful were death to end my grief, most hateful to destroy the sight of thee, dear vision better than all death or life. But I renounce all choice of life or death, for either shall be ever at thy side, and thus in bliss or woe be ever well. He murmured thus, and thus in monotone, intent upon that uncorrupted face, entranced except his moving lips alone, I glided with hushed footsteps from the place. This was the festival that filled with light. that palace in the city of the night. End of section 1. Section 2 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by MoonLylith. Section 2, The City of Dreadful Night, Parts 11 through 21. 11. What men are they who haunt these fatal glooms, and fill their living mouths with dust of death, and make their habitations in the tombs, and breathe eternal sighs with mortal breath, and pierce life's pleasant veil of various error, to reach that void of darkness and old terror, wherein expire the lamps of hope and faith. They have much wisdom, yet they are not wise. They have much goodness, yet they do not well. The fools, we know, have their own paradise. The wicked also have their proper hell. They have much strength, but still their doom is stronger. Much patience, but their time endureth longer. Much valor, but life mocks it with some spell. They are most rational and yet insane, an outward madness not to be controlled, a perfect reason in the central brain, which has no power, but sitteth wan and cold, and sees the madness, and foresees as plainly the ruin in its path, and trieth vainly to cheat itself, refusing to behold. And some are great in rank and wealth and power, and some renowned for genius and for worth. And some are poor and mean, who brood and cower and shrink from notice, and accept all dearth of body, heart, and soul, and leave to others all boons of life. Yet these and those are brothers, the saddest and the weariest men on earth. 12. Our isolated units could be brought to act together for some common end? For one by one, each silent with his thought, I marked a long loose line approach, and wend athwart the great cathedral's cloistered square, and slowly vanish from the moonlit air. Then I would follow in among the last, and in the porch a shrouded figure stood, who challenged each one pausing ere he passed, with deep eyes burning through a blank white hood. Whence come you in the world of life and light to this our city of tremendous night? From pleading in a senate of rich lords for some scant justice to our countless hordes, who toil half-starved with scarce a human right, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From wandering through many a solemn scene of opium visions with a heart serene and intellect miraculously bright, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From making hundreds laugh and roar with glee by my transcended feats of mimicry and humor wanton as an elfish sprite, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From prayer and fasting in a lonely cell, which brought an ecstasy ineffable of love and adoration and delight, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From ruling on a splendid kingly throne, a nation which beneath my rule has grown, year after year in wealth and arts and might, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From preaching to an audience fired with faith, the Lamb who died to save our souls from death, whose blood has washed our scarlet sins white, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From drinking fiery poison in a den crowded with tawdry girls and squalid men, who hoarsely laugh and curse and brawl and fight, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From picturing, with all beauty and all grace, first Eden and the parents of our race, a luminous rapture unto all men's sight, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From writing a great work with patient plan to justify the ways of God to man, and show how ill must fade and perish quite, I wake from daydreams to this real night. From desperate fighting with a little band against the powerful tyrants of our land, to free our brethren in their own despite, I wake from daydreams to this real night. Thus, challenged by that warder sad and stern, each one responded with his countersign, then entered the cathedral, and in turn I entered also, having given mine, but lingered near until I heard no more, and marked the closing of the massive door. 13. Of all things human which are strange and wild, this is perchance the wildest and most strange, and showeth man most utterly beguiled. To those who haunt that sunless city's range, that he bemoans himself for aye repeating how time is deadly swift, how life is fleeting, how naught is constant on the earth but change. The hours are heavy on him, and the days, the burden of the month he scarce can bear, and often in his secret soul he prays to sleep through barren periods unaware, arousing at some longed-for date of pleasure, which, having passed and yielded him small treasure, he would outsleep another term of care. Yet, in his marvelous fancy, he must make quick wings for time, and see it fly from us, this time which crawleth like a monstrous snake, wounded and slow and very venomous, which creeps blind worm-like round the earth and ocean, distilling poison at each painful motion, and seems condemned to circle ever thus. And since he cannot spend and use aright the little time here given him in trust, but wasteth it in weary undelight of foolish toil and trouble, strife, and lust, he naturally claimeth to inherit the everlasting future, that his merit might have full scope, as surely is most just. O length of the intolerable hours! O nights that are as eons of slow pain! O time, too ample for our vital powers! O life, whose woeful vanities remain immutable for all of all our legions through all the centuries and in all the regions? Not of your speed and variance we complain. We do not ask for a longer term of strife, weakness and weariness and nameless woes. We do not claim renewed and endless life, when this which is our torment here shall close. An everlasting conscience in a nation. We yearn for speedy death in full fruition, dateless oblivion, and divine repose. 14. Large glooms were gathered in the mighty fane, with tinted moon gleams slanting here and there, and all was hush, no swelling organ strain, no chant, no voice or murmuring of prayer. No priests came forth, no tinkling censers fumed, and the high altar space was unillumed. Around the pillars and against the walls leaned men and shadows. Others seemed to brood bent or recumbent in secluded stalls. Perchance they were not a great multitude, save in that city of so lonely streets, where one may count up every face he meets. All patiently awaited the event, without a stir or sound, as if no less self-occupied, doom-stricken, while attent. And then we heard a voice of solemn stress from the dark pulpit, and our gaze there met two eyes which burned as never eyes burned yet. Two steadfast and intolerable eyes, burning beneath the broad and rugged brow, the head behind it of enormous size, and as black fir grows in a large wind bough, our rooted congregation, gloom arrayed, by that great sad voice, deep and full, were swayed. Oh, melancholy brothers, dark, dark, dark. Oh, battling in black floods without an ark. Oh, spectral wanderers of unholy night. My soul hath bled for you these sunless years, with bitter blood drops running down like tears. Oh, dark, 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 withdrawn from joy and light. My heart is sick with anguish for your bale. Your woe hath been my anguish. Yea, I quail and perish in your perishing unblessed. And I have searched the height and depths, the scope of all our universe, with desperate hope to find some solace for your wild unrest. And now at last authentic word I bring, witnessed by every dead and living thing, good tidings of great joy for you, for all. There is no God, no fiend with names divine made us and tortures us. If we must pine, it is to satiate no being's gall. It was the dark delusion of a dream, that living person, conscious and supreme, whom we must curse for cursing us with life, whom we must curse because the life he gave could not be buried in the quiet grave, could not be killed by poison or the knife. This little life is all we must endure. The grave's most holy peace is ever sure. We fall asleep and never wake again. Nothing is of us but the moldering flesh, whose elements dissolve and merge afresh into earth, air, water, plants, and other men. We finish thus, and all our wretched race shall finish with its cycle and give place to other beings with their own time doom. Infinite eons ere our kind began, infinite eons after the last man has joined the mammoth in earth's tomb and womb. We bow down to the universal laws, which never had for man a special clause of cruelty or kindness, love or hate. If toads and vultures are obscene to sight, if tigers burn with beauty and with might, is it by favor or by wrath of fate? All substance lives and struggles evermore through countless shapes, continually at war, by countless interactions interknit. If one is born a certain day on earth, all times and forces tended to that birth. Not all the world could change or hinder it. I find no hint throughout the universe of good or ill, of blessing or of curse. I find alone necessity supreme, with infinite mystery, abysmal, dark, unlighted ever by the faintest spark. For us, the flitting shadows of a dream. Oh, brothers of sad lives, they are so brief. A few short years must bring us all relief. Can we not bear these years of laboring breath? But if you would not this poor life fulfill, lo, you are free to end it when you will, without the fear of waking after death. The organ-like vibrations of his voice thrilled through the vaulted aisles and died away. The yearning of the tones which bade rejoice was sad and tender as a requiem lay. Our shadowy congregation rested still, as brooding on that "End it when you will." 15. Wherever men are gathered, all the air is charged with human feeling, human thought. Each shout and cry and laugh, each curse and prayer, are into its vibrations surely wrought. Unspoken passion, wordless meditation are breathed into it with our respiration. It is with our life fraught and overfraught, so that no man there breathes earth's simple breath, as if alone on mountains or wide seas, but nourishes warm life, or hastens death with joys and sorrows, health and foul disease, wisdom and folly, good and evil labors, incessant of his multitudinous neighbors, he in his turn affecting all of these. That city's atmosphere is dark and dense, although not many exiles wander there, with many a potent evil influence, each adding poison to the poisoned air, infections of unutterable sadness, infections of incalculable madness, infections of incurable despair. 16. Our shadowy congregation rested still, as musing on that message we had heard, and brooding on that "End it when you will," perchance awaiting yet some other word, when keen as lightning through a muffled sky sprang forth a shrill and lamentable cry. "The man speaks sooth! Alas, the man speaks sooth! We have no personal life beyond the grave. There is no God. Fate knows nor wrath nor ruth. Can I find here the comfort which I crave? In all eternity I had one chance, one few years' term of gracious human life, the splendors of the intellect's advance, the sweetness of the home with babes and wife, the social pleasures with their genial wit, the fascination of the worlds of art, the glories of the worlds of nature lit by large imagination's glowing heart, the rapture of mere being, full of health, the careless childhood and the ardent youth, the strenuous manhood winning various wealth, the reverend age serene with life's long truth, all the sublime prerogatives of man, the storied memories of the times of old, the patient tracking of the world's great plan through sequences and changes myriad-fold? This chance was never offered me before. For me the infinite past is blank and dumb. This chance recurreth never, never more. Blank, blank for me the infinite to come. And this sole chance was frustrate from my birth, a mockery, a delusion, and my breath of noble human life upon this earth so racks me that I sigh for senseless death. My wine of life is poison mixed with gall. My noonday passes in a nightmare dream. I worse than lose the years which are my all. What can console me for the loss supreme? Speak not of comfort where no comfort is. Speak not at all. Can words make foul things fair? Our life's a cheat, our death a black abyss. Hush and be mute, envisaging despair. This vehement voice came from the northern isle, rapid and shrill to its abrupt harsh close, and none gave answer for a certain while, for words must shrink from these most wordless woes. At last, the pulpit speaker simply said, with humid eyes and thoughtful drooping head, "My brother, my poor brothers, it is thus. This life itself holds nothing good for us, but ends soon and never more can be. And we knew nothing of it ere our birth, and shall know nothing when consigned to earth. I ponder these thoughts, and they comfort me." 17. How the moon triumphs through the endless nights, how the stars throb and glitter as they wheel their thick procession of supernal lights around the blue vault obdurate as steel, and men regard with passionate awe and yearning the mighty marching and the golden burning, and think the heavens respond to what they feel. Boats gliding like dark shadows of a dream are glorified from vision as they pass the quivering moon bridge on the deep black stream. Cold windows kindle their dead glooms of glass to restless crystals. Cornice, dome, and column emerge from chaos in the splendor solemn. Like fairy lakes gleam lawns of dewy grass. With such a living light these dead eyes shine, these eyes of sightless heaven, that as we gaze we read a pity, tremulous, divine, or cold majestic scorn in their pure rays. Fond man, they are not haughty, are not tender. There is no heart or mind in all their splendor. They thread mere puppets all their marvelous maze. If we could near them with the flight unflown, we should but find them worlds as sad as this, or suns all self-consuming like our own, and ringed by planet worlds as much amiss. They wax and wane through fusion and confusion. The spheres eternal are a grand illusion. The Empyrean is a void abyss. 18. I wandered in a suburb of the north, and reached a spot whence 3 close lanes led down, beneath thick trees and hedgerows winding forth, like deep brook channels, deep and dark and loud. The air above was wan with misty light. The dull gray south showed one vague blur of white. I took the left-hand lane and slowly trod its eastern footpath, brushing as I went the humid leafage, and my feet were shod with heavy languor, and my frame downbent, with infinite sleepless weariness outworn. So many nights I thus had paced forlorn. After 100 steps, I grew aware of something crawling in the lane below. It seemed a wounded creature prostrate there, that sobbed with pangs in making progress slow. The hind limbs stretched to push, the fore limbs then to drag, for it would die in its own den. But coming level with it, I discerned that it had been a man, for at my tread it stopped in its sore travail, and half turned, leaning upon its right, and raised its head, and with the left hand twitched back as in ire long, gray, unreverend locks befouled with mire, a haggard, filthy face with bloodshot eyes, an infamy for manhood to behold. He gasped, all trembling, "What, you want my prize? You leave to rob me wine and lust and gold, and all that men go mad upon, since you have traced my sacred secret of the clue? You think that I am weak and must submit, yet I but scratch you with this poisoned blade, and you are dead as if I clothed with it that false, fierce, greedy heart. Betrayed! Betrayed! I fling this phial if you seek to pass, and you are forthwith shriveled up like grass." And then, with sudden change, Take thought, have pity on me, it is mine alone. If you could find, it would avail you not. Seek elsewhere on the pathway of your own, for who of mortal or immortal race the life track of another can retrace? Did you but know my agony and toil, 2 lanes diverge up yonder from this lane. My thin blood marks the long length of their soil. Such clue I left, who sought my clue in vain. My hands and knees are worn, both flesh and bone. I cannot move, but with continual moan. But I am in the very way at last to find the long-lost, broken, golden thread which reunites my present with my past. If you but go your own way." And I said, "I will retire as soon as you have told whereunto leadeth this lost thread of gold." "And so you know it not?" he hissed with scorn. "I feared you, imbecile. It leads me back from this accursed night without a morn, and through the deserts which have else no track, and through vast wastes of horror-haunted time, to Eden innocence in Eden's clime, and I become a nursling, soft and pure, an infant cradled on its mother's knee, without a past, love-cherished and secure, which, if it saw this loathsome present me, would plunge its face into the pillowing breast, and scream abhorrence hard to lull to rest." He turned to grope, and I, retiring, brushed thin shreds of gossamer from off my face, and mused, his life would grow, the germ uncrushed. He should to antenatal night retrace, and hide his elements in that large womb, beyond the reach of man-evolving doom. And even thus, what wary way were planned, to seek oblivion through the far-off gate of birth, when that of death is close at hand? For this is law, if law there be in fate. what never has been, yet may have its win. The thing which has been, never is again. 19. The mighty river flowing dark and deep, with ebb and flood from the remote sea tides, vague sounding through the city's sleepless sleep, is named the River of the Suicides. For night by night, some lorn wretch over-weary, and shuddering from the future yet more dreary, within its cold, secure oblivion, hides. One plunges from the bridge's parapet, as by some blind and sudden frenzy hurled. Another wades in slow with purpose set, until the waters are above him furled. Another, in a boat, with dreamlike motion, glides drifting down into the desert ocean, to starve or sink from out the desert world. They perish from their suffering surely thus, for none beholding them attempts to save. The while each thinks how soon, solicitous, he may seek refuge in the self-same wave. Some hour, when tired of ever vain endurance, impatience will forerun the sweet assurance of perfect peace eventual in the grave. When this poor tragic farce has palled us long, why, actors and spectators, do we stay? To fill our social roles outright or wrong? To see what shifts are yet in the dull play for our illusion? To refrain from grieving dear foolish friends by our untimely leaving? But those asleep at home, how blessed are they! Yet it is but for one night after all. What matters one brief night of dreary pain, when after it the weary eyelids fall upon the weary eyes and wasted brain, and all sad scenes and thoughts and feelings vanish in that sweet sleep no power can ever banish, that one best sleep which never wakes again. 20. I sat me weary on a pillar's base, and leaned against the shaft, for broad moonlight o'erflowed the peacefulness of cloistered space, a shore of shadow slanting from the right. The great cathedral's western front stood there, a wave-worn rock in that calm sea of air. Before it, opposite my place of rest, two figures faced each other, large, austere, a couchant sphinx in shadow to the breast, an angel standing in the moonlight clear. So mighty by magnificence of form, they were not dwarfed beneath that mass enorme. Upon the cross-hilt of a naked sword, the angel's hands, as prompt to smite, were held. His vigilant, intense regard was poured upon the creature placidly unquelled, whose front was set at level gaze, which took no heed of aught, a solemn, trance-like look. And as I pondered these opposed shapes, my eyelids sank in stupor, that dull swoon which drugs and with a leaden mantle drapes the outworn to worse weariness. But soon a sharp and clashing noise the stillness broke, and from the evil lethargy I woke. The angel's wings had fallen, stone on stone, and lay there shattered, hence the sudden sound. A warrior, leaning on his sword alone, now watched the Sphinx with that regard profound. The Sphinx unchanged looked forthright, as aware of nothing in that vast abyss of air. Again I sank in that repose unsweet. Again a clashing noise my slumber rent. The warrior's sword lay broken at his feet. An unarmed man, with raised hands impotent, now stood before the Sphinx, which ever kept such mien, as if with open eyes it slept. My eyelids sank in spite of wonder groan. A louder crash upstartled me in dread. The man had fallen forward, stone on stone, and lay there shattered, with its trunkless head between the monster's large quiescent paws. Beneath its grand front, changeless as life's laws. The moon had circled westward, full and bright, and made the temple front a mystic dream, and bathed the whole enclosure with its light. The sordid angels' wrecks, the Sphinx supreme. I pondered long that cold, majestic face, whose vision seemed of infinite void space. 21. Near the center of that northern crest stands out a level upland, bleak and bare, from which the city east and south and west sinks gently in long waves. Enthroned there an image sits, stupendous, superhuman, the bronze colossus of a winged woman, upon a graded granite base foursquare. Low-seated she leans forward massively, with cheek on clenched left hand, the forearms might erect, its elbow on her rounded knee. Across a clasped book in her lap, the right upholds a pair of compasses. She gazes with full-set eyes, but wandering in thick mazes of somber thought, beholds no outward sight. Words cannot picture her, but all men know that solemn sketch the pure, sad artist wrought 3 centuries and 60 years ago, with fantasies of his peculiar thought. The instruments of carpentry and science scattered about her feet, in strange alliance with the keen wolfhound sleeping undistraught. Scales, hourglass, bell, and magic square above, the grave and solid infant perched beside, with open winglets that might bear a dove, intent upon its tablets, heavy-eyed, her folded wings as of a mighty eagle, but all too impotent to lift the regal robustness of her earth-born strength and pride. And with those wings, and that light wreath which seemed to mock her grand head, and the knotted frown of forehead charged with baleful thoughts and dreams, the household bunch of keys, the housewife's gown, voluminous, indented, and yet rigid, as if a shell of burnished metal frigid, the feet thick shod to tread all weakness down, the comet hanging o'er the waste dark seas, the massy rainbow curved in front of it, beyond the village with the masts and trees, the snaky imp dog-headed from the pit, bearing upon its bat-like leather pinions her name unfolded in the sun's dominions, the Melancholia that transcends all wit. Thus has the artist copied her, and thus surrounded to expound her form sublime, her fate heroic and calamitous, fronting the dreadful mysteries of time, unvanquished in defeat and desolation, undaunted in the hopeless conflagration of the day setting on her baffled prime. Baffled and beaten back, she works on still. Weary and sick of soul, she works the more, sustained by her indomitable will. The hand shall fashion, and the brain shall pour, and all her sorrow shall be turned to labor, till death, the friend-foe, piercing with his saber that mighty heart of hearts, ends bitter war. But as if blacker night could dawn on night, with tenfold gloom on moonless night unstarred, a sense more tragic than defeat and blight, more desperate than strife with hope debarred, more fatal than the adamantine never, encompassing her passionate endeavor, dawns glooming in her tenebrous regard, the sense that every struggle brings defeat, because fate holds no prize to crown success, that all the oracles are dumb or cheat, because they have no secret to express, that none can pierce the vast black veil uncertain, because there is no light beyond the curtain, that all is vanity and nothingness. Titanic, from her high throne in the north, that city's somber patroness and queen, in bronze solemnity she gazes forth over her capital of Teen and Threne, over the river with its isles and bridges, the marsh and moorland to the stern rock ridges, confronting them with a coeval mien. The moving moon and stars from east to west circle before her in the sea of air. Shadows and gleams glide round her solemn rest. Her subjects often gaze up to her there. The strong to drink new strength of iron endurance, the weak new terrors, all renewed assurance and confirmation of the old despair. End of section 2. Section 3 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 3. To Our Ladies of Death. Tired with all these, for restful death I cry. Shakespeare, Sonnet 66. Weary of erring in this desert life, weary of hoping hopes forever vain, weary of struggling in all sterile strife, weary of thought which maketh nothing plain, I close my eyes and calm my panting breath, and pray to thee, O ever quiet death, to come and soothe away my bitter pain. The strong shall strive, may they be victors crowned. The wise still seek, may they at length find truth. The young still hope, may purest love be found, to make their age more glorious than their youth. For me, my brain is weak, my heart is cold, my hope and faith long dead, my life but bold in jest and laugh to parry hateful ruth. Over me passed the days and months and years, like squadrons and battalions of the foe, trampling with thoughtless thrusts and alien jeers over a wounded soldier lying low. He grips his teeth or flings them words of scorn to mar their triumph. but the while, outworn, inwardly craves for death to end his woe. Thus I, in secret, call, O death, to thee, thou youngest of the solemn sisterhood, thou gentlest of the mighty sisters three, whom I have known so well, since first endued by love and grief, with vision to discern what spiritual life doth throb and burn through all our world, with evil powers and good. The three whom I have known so long, so well, by intimate communion, face to face, in every mood of earth, of heaven, of hell, in every season and in every place. That joy of life has ceased to visit me, as one estranged by powerful witchery, infatuate in a siren's weird embrace. First thou, O priestess, prophetess, and queen, Our Lady of Beatitudes, first thou, of mighty stature, of seraphic mien, upon the tablet of whose broad white brow unvanquishable truth is written clear, the secret of the mystery of our sphere, the regnant word of the eternal now. Thou standest garmented in purest white, but from thy shoulders wings of power half spread invest thy form with such miraculous light as dawn may clothe the earth with, and instead of any jewel-kindled golden crown, the glory of thy long hair flowing down is dazzling noonday sunshine round thy head. Upon a sword thy left hand resteth calm, a naked sword, two-edged and long and straight. A branch of olive with a branch of palm thy right hand proffereth to hostile fate. The shining plumes that clothe thy feet are bound by knotted strings, as if to tread the ground with weary steps when thou wouldst soar elate. Twin heavens, uplifted to the heavens, thine eyes are solemn with unutterable thought and love and aspiration. Yet there lies within their light eternal sadness, wrought by hope deferred, and baffled tenderness. Of all the souls whom thou dost love and bless, how few revere and love thee as they ought. Thou leadest heroes from their warfare here to nobler fields where grander crowns are won. Thou leadest sages from this twilight sphere to cloudless heavens and an unsetting sun. Thou leadest saints unto that pure air whose breath is spiritual life and prayer. Yet lo, they seek thee not, but fear and shun. Thou takest to thy most maternal breast young children from the desert of this earth, ere sin hath stained their souls or grief oppressed, and bearest them unto an heavenly birth, to be the vestals of God's fane above. And yet their kindred moan against thy love, with wild and selfish moans in bitter dearth. Most Holy Spirit, first self-conqueror, thou victress over time and destiny and evil in the all-deciding war, so fierce, so long, so dreadful, would that me thou hadst upgathered in my life's pure morn, unworthy then, less worthy now. Forlorn, I dare not, gracious mother, call on thee. Next thou, O Sibyl, sorceress and queen, Our Lady of Annihilation, thou of mighty stature, of demoniac mien, upon whose swarthy face and livid brow are graven deeply anguish, malice, scorn, strength ravaged by unrest, resolve forlorn of any hope, dazed pride that will not bow. Thy form is clothed with wings of iron gloom, but around about thee, like a chain, is rolled, cramping the sway of every mighty plume, a stark, constringent serpent, fold on fold of its two heads. One sting is in thy brain, the other in thy heart. Their venom pain, like fire, distilling through thee uncontrolled. A rod of serpents wieldeth thy right hand, thy left a cup of raging fire, whose light burns lurid on thyself as thou dost stand, thy lidless eyes tenebrously bright, thy wings, thy vestures, thy disheveled hair, dark as the grave, thou statue of despair, thou night essential, radiating night. Thus have I seen thee in thy actual form. Not thus can see thee those whom thou dost sway. Inscrutable enchantress, young and warm, part beautiful and brilliant, ever gay, thy cup, the very wine of life, thy rod, the wand of more voluptuous spells than God can wield in heaven. Thus charmest thou thy prey. The selfish, fatuous, proud, and pitiless, all who have falsified life's royal trust. The strong, whose strength hath fast in idleness. The great heart given up to worldly lust. The great mind destitute of moral faith. Thou scourgest down to night and utter death, or penal spheres of retribution just. Almighty Spirit, fraudful and malign, demon of madness and perversity, the evil passions which may make me thine are not yet irrepressible in me, and I have pierced thy mark of riant youth and seen thy form in all its hideous truth. I will not, dreadful mother, call on thee. Last thou, retired nun and throneless queen, Our Lady of Oblivion, last thou, of human stature, of abstracted mien, upon whose pallid face and drooping brow are shadowed melancholy dreams of doom and deep absorption into silent gloom and weary bearing of the heavy now. Thou art all shrouded in a gauzy veil, sombrous and cloud-like, all except that face of subtle loveliness, though weirdly pale. Thy soft, slow, gliding footsteps leave no trace and stir no sound. Thy drooping hands enfold their frail white fingers, and, unconscious, hold a poppy wreath, thine anodyne of grace. Thy hair is like a twilight round thy head. Thine eyes are shadowed wells from Lethe stream, with drowsy subterranean waters fed, obscurely deep, without a stir or gleam. The gazer drinks in from them with his gaze, an opiate charm to curtain all his days, a passive languor of oblivious dream. Thou hauntest twilight regions, and the trance of moonless nights, when stars are few and wan, within black woods, or over the expanse of desert seas abysmal, or upon old solitary shores whose populous graves are rocked in rest by ever moaning waves, or through vast ruined cities, still and lone, the weak, the weary, and the desolate, the poor, the mean, the outcast, the oppressed, all trodden down beneath the march of fate, thou gatherest, loving sister, to thy breast, soothing their pain and weariness asleep. Then, in thy hidden dreamland, hushed and deep, dost lay them, shrouded in eternal rest. O sweetest sister, and sole patron saint of all the humble eremites who flee from out life's crowded tumult, stunned and faint, to seek a stern and lone tranquillity in Libyan wastes of time, my hopeless life, with famished yearning, craveth rest from strife. Therefore, thou restful one, I call on thee. Take me and lull me into perfect sleep, down, down, far hidden in thy duskiest cave, while all the clamorous years above me sweep unheard, or, like the voice of seas that rave on far-off coasts, but murmuring o'er my trance, a dim vast monotone that shall enhance the restful rapture of this inviolate grave. Upgathered thus in thy divine embrace, upon my eyes thy soft mesmeric hand, while wreaths of opiate odor interlace about my pulseless brow, babe pure and bland, passionless, senseless, thoughtless. Let me dream some ever slumbrous, never varying theme within the shadow of thy timeless land, that when I thus have drunk my inmost fill of perfect peace, I may arise renewed in soul and body, intellect and will, equal to cope with life whate'er its mood, to sway its storm and energize its calm, through rhythmic years evolving like a psalm of infinite love and faith and sanctitude. But if this cannot be, no less I cry, come, lead me with thy terrorless control down to our mother's bosom, there to die by abdication of my separate soul. So shall this single, self-impelling piece of mechanism from lone labor cease, resolving into union with the whole. Our mother feedeth thus our little life, that we in turn may feed her with our death. The great sea sways, one interwoven strife, wherefrom the sun exhales a subtle breath, to float the heavens sublime in form and hue, then, churning cold and dark, in order due, rain, weeping back, to swell the sea beneath. One part of me shall feed a little worm, and it a bird on which a man may feed. One lime the mold, one nourish insect sperm, one thrill sweet grass, one pulse in bitter weed. This swell a fruit, and that evolve in air. Another trickle to a springlet's lair, another paint a daisy on the mead, with cosmic interchange of parts for all, through all the modes of being numberless of every element as may befall. And if earth's general soul has consciousness, their new life must with strange new joy be thrilled, of perfect law all perfectly fulfilled. No sin, no fear, no failure, no excess. Weary of living isolated life, weary of hoping hopes forever vain, weary of struggling in all sterile strife, weary of thought which makes nothing plain, I close my eyes and hush my panting breath and yearn for thee, divinely tranquil death, to come and soothe away my bitter pain. 1861. End of section 3. Section 4 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 4. Insomnia. Sleepless himself to give to others sleep, he giveth his beloved sleep. I heard the sounding of the midnight hour. The others one by one had left the room, in calm assurance that the gracious power of sleep's fine alchemy would bless the gloom, transmuting all its leaden weight to gold, to treasures of rich virtue manifold. New strength, new health, new life, just weary enough to nestle softly, sweetly, into divine unconsciousness, completely delivered from the world of toil and care and strife, just weary enough to feel assured of rest, of sleep's divine oblivion and repose, renewing heart and brain for richer zest of waking life when golden morning glows, as young and pure and glad as if the first that ever on the void of darkness burst with ravishing warmth and light, on dewy grass and flowers and blithe birds singing, and shining waters all enraptured springing, fragrance and shine and song out of the womb of night. But I, with infinite weariness outworn, haggard with endless nights unblessed by sleep, ravaged by thoughts unutterably forlorn, plunged in despairs unfathomably deep, went cold and pale and trembling with affright into the desert vastitude of night, arid and wild and black, foreboding no oasis of sweet slumber, counting beforehand all the countless number of sands that are its minutes on my desolate track. And so I went, the last, to my drear bed, aghast as one who should go down to lie among the blissfully unconscious dead, assured that as the endless years flowed by over the dreadful silence and deep gloom and dense oppression of the stifling tomb, he only of them all, nerveless and impotent to madness, never could hope oblivion's perfect trance forever, an agony of life eternal in death's pall. But that would be forever without cure, and yet the agony be not more great, supreme fatigue and pain, while they endure, into eternity their time translate, be it of hours and days or countless years and boundless eons, it alike appears to the crushed victim's soul. Utter despair foresees no termination, but feels itself of infinite duration. The smallest fragment, instant, comprehends the whole. The absolute of torture as of bliss is timeless, each transcending time and space. The one, an infinite obscure abyss, the other, an eternal heaven of grace, keeping a little lamp of glimmering light companion through the horrors of the night. I laid me down aghast, as he of all who pass death's quiet portal, malignantly reserved alone immortal, in consciousness of bale that must forever last. I laid me down and closed my heavy eyes, as if sleep's mockery might win true sleep, and grew aware with awe but not surprise, blindly aware through all the silence deep of some dark presence watching by my bed, the awful image of a nameless dread. But I lay still fordone, and felt its shadow on me, dark and solemn and steadfast as a monumental column, and thought drear thoughts of doom, and heard the bells chime 1. Then I raised my weary eyes and saw, by some slant moonlight on the ceiling throne and faint lamp gleam, that image of my awe, still as a pillar of basaltic stone, but all enveloped in a somber shroud, except the wan face drooping, heavy-browed, with sad eyes fixed on mine. Sad, weary, yearning eyes, but fixed remorseless upon my eyes, yet warier, that were forceless to bear the cruel pressure, cruel, unmalign. Wherefore I asked for what I knew too well. O ominous midnight presence, what art thou? Whereto, in tones that sounded like a knell, I am the second hour, appointed now to watch beside thy slumberless unrest. Then I, thus both alike unblessed, for I should sleep, you fly. Are not those wings beneath thy mantle molded? O hour, unfold those wings so straightly folded, and urge thy natural flight beneath the moonlit sky. My wings shall open when your eyes shall close in real slumber from this waking drear. Your wild unrest is my enforced repose. Ere I move hence, you must not know me here. Could not your wings fan slumber through my brain, soothing away its weariness and pain? Your sleep must stir my wings. Sleep, and I bear you gently on my pinions athwart my span of hollow night's dominions, whence hour on hour shall bear to morning's golden springs. That which I ask of you, you ask of me, O weary hour, thus standing sentinel against your nature, as I feel and see against my own your form immovable. Could I bring sleep to set you on the wing, what other thing so gladly would I bring? Truly, the poet saith, it is best whose absence we deplore most, whose presence in our longing is the foremost. What blessings equal sleep, save only love and death? I let my lids fall, sick of thought and sense, but felt that shadow heavy on my heart, and saw the night before me, an immense black waste of ridge walls, hour by hour apart, dividing deep ravines from ridge to ridge. Sleep's flying hour was an aerial bridge. But I, whose hours stood fast, must climb down painfully each steep side hither, and climb more painfully each steep side thither, and so make 1 hour's span for years of travail last. Thus I went down into that first ravine, warily, slowly, blindly, and alone, staggering, stumbling, sinking depths unseen, shaken and bruised and gasped by stub and stone. And at the bottom, paven with slipperiness. A torrent brook rushed headlong with such stress against my feeble limbs, such fury of wave and foam and icy bleakness buffeting insupportably my weakness, that when I would recall, dazed memory swirls and swims. How I got through, I know not, faint as death, and then I had to climb the awful scarp, creeping with many a pause for panting breath, clinging to tangled root and ruck jut sharp, perspiring with faint chills instead of heat, trembling and bleeding hands and knees and feet, falling to rise anew until, with lamentable toil and travel, upon the ridge of arid sand and gravel, I lay supine, half dead, and heard the bells chime 2, and knew a change of watchers in the room, without a stir or sound beside my bed, only the tingling silence of the gloom, the muffled pulsing of the night's deep dread, and felt an image mightier to appall. And looked, the moonlight on the bedfoot wall and corniced ceiling white was slanting now, and in the midst stood solemn and hopeless as a black sepulchral column, a steadfast shrouded form, the third hour of the night. The fixed regard implacably austere, yet none the less ineffably forlorn. Something transcending all my former fear came jarring through my shattered frame outworn. I knew that crushing rock could not be stirred. I had no heart to say a single word, but closed my eyes again, and set me shuddering to the task stupendous of climbing down and up that gulf tremendous, until the next hour ridge beyond hope's farthest ken. Men sigh and plain and wail how life is brief. Ah, yes, our bright eternities of bliss are transient, rare, minute beyond relief, mere stardust meteors in time's night abyss. Ah, no, our black eternities, intense of bale, are lasting, dominant, immense, as time, which is their breath. The memory of the bliss is yearning sorrow. The memory of the bale clouds every morrow, darkening through nights and days unto the night of death. No human words could paint my travail sore in the thick darkness of the next ravine, deeper immeasurably than that before, when hideous agonies, unheard, unseen, in overwhelming floods of torture roll, and horrors of great darkness drown the soul. To be is not to be in memory, save as ghastliest impression, and chaos of demoniacal possession. I shuddered on the ridge and heard the bells chime 3. And like a pillar of essential gloom, most terrible in stature and regard, black in the moonlight, filling all the room, the image of the 4th hour, evil starred, stood over me. But there was something more, something behind it, undiscerned before, more dreadful than its dread, which overshadowed it with fateful, inexorable fascination, hateful, a wan and formless shade from regions of the dead. I shut my eyes against that spectral shade, which yet allured me with a deadly charm, and that black image of the hour, dismayed by such tremendous menacing of harm, and so into the gulf as into hell, where what immeasurable depths I fell, with seizures of the heart, whose each clutch seemed the end of all pulsation, and tremors of examinate prostration are horrors in my soul that never can depart. If I for hope or wish had any force, it was that I might rush down, sharply hurled from rock to rock, until a mangled course down with the fury of the torrent world, the fury of the black waters and white foam, to where the homeless find their only home in the immense void sea, whose isles are worlds surrounding, unsurrounded, whose depths no mortal plummet ever sounded, beneath all surface storm calm in eternity. Such hope or wish was as a feeble spark, a little lamp's pale glimmer in a tomb, to just reveal the hopeless, deadly dark and wordless horrors of my soul's fixed doom. Yet some mysterious instinct, obstinate, blindly unconscious as a law of fate, still urged me on, and bore my shattered being through the unfeared peril of death less hateful than the life as sterile. I shuddered on the ridge, and heard the bells chime. 4! The image of that fifth hour of the night was blacker in the moonlight, now aslant upon its left than on its shrouded right, and over and behind it, dominant, the shadow, not its shadow, cast its spell, most vague and dim and wan and terrible, death's ghastly aureole, pregnant with overpowering fascination, commanding my repulsive instigation, despair's envenomed anodyne to tempt the soul. I closed my eyes, but could no longer keep under that image in most awful shade, supine in mockery of blissful sleep, delirious with such fierce thirst unallayed. Of all worst agonies, the most unblessed is passive agony of wild unrest. Trembling and faint I rose, and dressed with painful efforts, and descended with furtive footsteps and with breath suspended, and left the slumbering house with my unslumbering woes. Constrained to move through the unmoving hours, accursed from rest because the hours stood still, feeling the hands of the infernal powers heavy upon me for enormous ill, inscrutable, intolerable pain, against which mortal pleas and prayers are vain, gaspings of dying breath, and human struggles, dying spasms yet vainer. Renounce defense when doom is the arraigner. Let impotence of life subside, appeased in death. I paced the silent and deserted streets, in cold dark shade and chillier moonlight gray, pondering a dolorous series of defeats and black disasters from life's opening day, invested with the shadow of a doom that filled the spring and summer with a gloom most wintry bleak and drear. Gloom from within, as from a sulphurous censer, making the glooms without forever denser, to blight the buds and flowers and fruitage of my year. Against the bridge's stony parapet I leaned, and gazed into the water's black, and marked an angry morning, red and wet, beneath the livid and enormous rack, glare out, confronting the belated moon, huddled and wan and feeble as the swoon of featureless despair. when some stray workman, half asleep but lusty, passed urgent through the rain-pour, wild and gusty, I felt a ghost already, planted, watching there. As phantom to its grave or to its den, some wild beast of the night when night is sped, I turned unto my homeless home again, to front a day only less charged with dread than that dread night, and after day to front another night of what would be the brunt? I put the thought aside, to be resumed when common life, unfolded in common daylight, had my brain remolded. Meanwhile, the flaws of rain refreshed and fortified. The day passed, and the night, and other days, and other nights, and all of evil doom. The sun hours in a sick, bewildering haze, the star hours in a thick, enormous gloom, with rending lightnings and with thunder knells, the ghastly hours of all the timeless hells, bury them with their bane. I look back on the words already written, and writhe by cold rage stung, by self-scorn smitten. They are so weak and vain and infinitely inane. How from those hideous male bulges deep I could ever win back to upper earth, restored to human nights of blessed sleep, and healthy waking with the day's new birth? How do men climb back from a swoon whose stress, crushing far deeper than all consciousness, is deep as deep death seems? Who can the steps and stages meet and number, by which we reemerge from nightly slumber? Our poor, vast, petty life is one dark maze of dreams. March 1882. End of section 4. Section 5 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 5. He heard her sing. We were now in the midmost Maytime, in the full green flood of the spring, when the air is sweet all the daytime, with the blossoms and birds that sing, when the air is rich all the night, and richest of all in its noon, when the nightingales pant the delight and keen stress of their love to the moon, when the almond and apple and pear spread wavering wavelets of snow in the light of the soft warm air, far flushed with a delicate glow, when the towering chestnuts uphold their masses of spires red or white, and the pendulous tresses of gold of the slim laburnum burn bright, and the lilac guardeth the bowers with the gleam of a lifted spear, and the scent of the hawthorn flowers breathes all the new life of the year, and the linden's tender pink bud by the green of the leaf is o'errun, and the bronze beech shines like blood in the light of the morning sun, and the leaf buds seem spangling some network of gossamer flung on the elm, and the hedges are filling their fretwork with every sweet green of spring's realm, and the flowers are everywhere budding and blowing about our feet, the green of the meadow star-studding, and the bright green blades of the wheat. An evening and night of song. For first, when I left the town and took the lane that is long and came out on the breeze swept down, the sunset heavens were all ringing wide over the golden gorse, with the skylarks rapturous singing, a revel of larks in full force, a revel of larks in the raptures surpassing all raptures of man, who ponders the blessings he captures and finds in each blessing some ban. And then I went on down the dale in the light of the afterglow, in that strange light, green and pale and serene and pathetic and slow in its fading round to the north, while the light of the unseen moon from the east comes brightening forth, an ever-increasing boon. And there in the cottage, my Alice, through the hours so short and so long, kept filled to the brim love's chalice with the wine of music and song. And first, with colossal Beethoven, the gentlest spirit sublime of the harmonies interwoven, eternity woven with time, of the melodies slowly and slowly dissolving away through the soul, while it dissolves with them wholly, and our being is lost in the whole, as gentle as Dante the poet. For only the lulls of the stress of the mightiest spirits can know it, this ineffable gentleness. And then, with the delicate, tender, fantastic dreamer of night, whose splendor is star-like splendor, and his light a mystic moonlight, nocturne on nocturne, dreaming, while the mind floats far in the haze, and the dusk, and the shadow, and the gleaming of a realm that has no days. And then she sang ballads olden, ballads of love and of woe, love all burningly golden, grief with heart's blood in its flow. Those ballads of Scotland that thrill you, keen from the heart to the heart, till their pathos is seeming to kill you with an exquisite bliss in the smart. And then we went out of the valley, and over the spur of the hill, and down by a woodland alley, where the sprinkled moonlight lay still. For the breeze in the boughs was still, and the breeze was still in the sprays, and the leaves had scarcely a thrill in the stream of the silver rays, but looked as if drawn on the sky, or etched with a graver keen. Sharp shadows thrown from on high, deep out of the azure serene, and a certain copse we knew, where never in Maytime fails, while the night distills sweet dew, the song of the nightingales, and together we heard the lyrical drama of love, of the wonderful passionate bird, which swelleth the heart so above all other thought of this life, all other care of this earth, be it of pleasure or strife, be it of sorrow or mirth, saving the one intense, imperious passion supreme, kindling the soul and the sense, making the world but a dream, the dream of an aching delight and a yearning afar and afar, while the music thrills all the void night to the loftiest pulsating star? Love, love only, forever, love with its torture and bliss. All the world's glories can never equal two souls in one kiss. And when I had bidden farewell to my love at the cottage door, for a night and a day farewell, for a night and a day and no more, I went down to the shining strand of our own beloved bay, to the shore of soft white sand, caressed by the pure white spray, in the arms of the hills serene, clothed from the base to the crest, with garments of manifold green, curving to east and to west. And high in the pale blue south, where the clouds were white as wool, Over the little bay mouth the moon shone near the full, and I walked by the wave's soft moan, for my heart was beyond control, and I needed to be alone with the night, and my love, and my soul, and I could not think of sleep in the moonlight broad and clear, for a music solemn and deep filled all my spirit's sphere, a music interwoven of all that night I had heard, from the music of mighty Beethoven to the song of the little brown bird. And thus, as I paced the shore beneath the azure abyss, and my soul thrilled more and more with a yearning and sadness of bliss, a voice came over the water from over the eastern cape, like the voice of some ocean daughter wailing a lover's escape, a voice so plaintive and distant, as faint as a wounded dove, whose wings are scarcely resistant to the air beneath and above, wavering, panting, urging from the farthest east to the west, over some wild sea, surging in the hope forlorn of its nest, a voice that quivered and trembled with falls of a broken heart, and then like that dove reassembled its forces to play out its part, till it came to a fall that was dying, the end of an infinite grief, a sobbing and throbbing and sighing, that death was a welcome relief. And so there was silence once more, and the moonlight looked sad as a pall, and I stood entranced on the shore, and marveled what next would befall. And thus all expectant abiding, I waited not long, for soon a boat came gliding and gliding out in the light of the moon, gliding with muffled oars, slowly a thin dark line, round from the shadowing shores, into the silver shine of the clear moon, westering now, and still drew on and on, while the water before its brow breaking and glistering shone slowly in silence strange, and the rower rowed till it lay afloat within easy range, deep in the curve of the bay. And besides the rower were two, a woman who sat in the stern, and her by fame I knew, one of those fames that burn, startling and kindling the world, one whose likeness we everywhere see, and a man reclining, half curled, with an indolent grace, at her knee. The Seigneur, lord of her choice, and he lightly touched a guitar for that glorious voice, illumined the sun with a star. She sat superb and erect, stately, all happy, serene, her right hand toying unchecked with the hair of that page of a queen, with her head and her throat and her bust, like the bust and the throat and the head of her who has long been dust, of her who shall never be dead, preserved by the potent art, made trebly potent by love, while the transient ages depart from under the heavens above, preserved in the color and line on the canvas fulgently flung by him, the artist divine, who triumphed and vanished so young. Surely there rarely hath been a lot more to be envied in life than thy lot, O Fornarina, whom Raphael's heart took to wife. There was silence yet for a time, save the tinkling, capricious and quaint. Then she lifted her voice sublime, no longer tender and faint. Pathetic and tremulous? No, but firm as a column it rose, rising solemn and slow, with a full, rich swell to the close. Firm as a marble column, soaring with noble pride, in a triumph of rapture, solemn to some hero deified, in a rapture of exaltation made calm by its stress intense, in a triumph of consecration and a jubilation immense. And the voice flowed on, and ever it swelled as it poured, till the stars that throbbed as they shone seemed throbbing with it in accord, till the moon herself in my dream, still empress of all the night, was only that voice supreme, translated into pure light. And I lost all sense of the earth, though I still had sense of the sea. And I saw the stupendous girth of a tree, like the Norse world tree, and its branches filled all the sky, and the deep sea watered its root, and the clouds were its leaves on high, and the stars were its silver fruit. Yet the stars were the notes of the singing, and the moon was the voice of the song, through the vault of the firmament ringing, and swelling resistlessly strong. And the whole vast night was a shell for that music of manifold might, and was strained by the stress of the swell of the music, yet vaster than night. And I saw, as a crystal fountain, whose shaft was a column of light, more high than the loftiest mountain, ascend the abyss of the night. And its spray filled all the sky, and the clouds were the clouds of its spray, which glittered in star points on high, and filled with pure silver the bay. And ever in rising and falling, it sang as it rose and it fell, and the heavens, with their pure azure walling, all pulsed with the pulse of its swell. For the stars were the notes of the singing, and the moon was the voice of the song, through the vault of the firmament ringing, and swelling ineffably strong. And the whole vast night was a shell for that music of manifold might, and was strained by the stress of the swell of the music, yet vaster than night. And the fountain in swelling and soaring, and filling beneath and above, grew flushed with red fire in outpouring, transmuting great power into love. Great power, with a greater love flushing, immense and intense and supreme, as if all the world's heart-blood outgushing ensanguined the trance of my dream. And the waves of its blood seemed to dash on the shore of the sky to the cope, with the stress of the fire of a passion and yearning of limitless scope. Vast fire of a passion and yearning, keen torture of rapture intense, a most unendurable burning, consuming the soul with the sense love, love only, forever love with its torture of bliss. All the world's glories can never equal two souls in one kiss. Love and ever love wholly, love in all time and all space. Life is consummate then solely in the death of a burning embrace. And at length, when the voice sank mute, and silence fell over all save the tinkling thin of that lute, the deep heavens rushed down like a pall. The stars and the moon for a time, with all their splendors of light, were quenched with that voice sublime, and great darkness filled the night, when I felt again the scent of the night flowers rich and sweet, as ere my senses went, and knew where I stood on my feet, and saw the yet bright bay, and the moon gone low in my dream. The boat had passed away, with her the singer supreme. She was gone, the marvelous singer whose wonderful worldwide fame could never possibly bring her a tithe of her just acclaim. And I wandered all night in a trance of rapture and yearning and love, and saw the dim gray expanse flush far with the dawning above. And I passed that copse in the night, but the nightingales all were dumb from their passionate aching delight, and perhaps whoever should come on the morrow would find I have read, under its bush or its tree, some poor little brown bird dead, dead of its melody, slain by the agitation, by the stress and the strain of the strife, and the pang of the vain emulation, and the music yet dearer than life. And I heard the skylark singing high in the morning sun, all the sunrise heavens ringing as the sunset heavens had done. And ever I dreamed and pondered, while over the fragrant soil my happy footsteps wandered, before I resumed my toil. Truly, my darling, my Alice, truly, the whole night long have I filled to the brim love's chalice with the wine of music and song. I have passed and repassed your door from the singing until the dawn, a dozen times and more, and ever the curtains drawn. And now that the morn is breaking out of the stillness deep, sweet as my visions of waking be all your visions of sleep. Could you but wake, O my dearest, a moment and give one glance, just a furtive peep the merest, to learn the day's advance. For I must away up the dale and over the hill to my toil, and the night's rich dreams grow pale in the working day's turmoil. But tonight, O my darling, my Alice, till night it will not be long, we will fill to the brim love's chalice with the wine of music and song. And never the memory fails of what I have learnt in my dream, from the song of the nightingales and the song of the singer supreme. Love, love only forever, love with its torture and bliss. All the world's glories can never equal two souls in one kiss. Love, love ever and wholly, love in all time and all space. Love is consummate then solely in the death of a burning embrace. February 1882. End of section 5. Section 6 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 6. In the Room.
C'est un signe fable et tragique comédie. Rabelais.
1. The sun was down, and twilight gray filled half the air. But in the room, whose curtain had been drawn all day, the twilight was a dusky gloom, which seemed at first as still as death and void, but was indeed all rife with subtle thrills, the pulse and breath of multitudinous lower life. 2. In their abrupt and headlong way, bewildered flies for light had dashed against the curtain all the day, and now slept, wintrily abashed, and nimble mice slept, wearied out with such a double night's uproar. But solid beetles crawled about the chilly hearth and naked floor. 3. And so, throughout the twilight hour, that vaguely murmurous hush and rest there brooded, and beneath its power, life throbbing held its throbs suppressed. Until the thin-voiced mirror sighed, "I am all blurred with dust and damp. So long ago the clear day died, so long has gleamed nor fire nor lamp." 4. Whereon the curtain murmured back, "Some changes on us, good or ill. Behind me and before is black, as when those human things lie still. But I have seen the darkness grow, as grows the daylight every morn. Have felt out there long shine and glow, in here long chilly dusk forlorn." 5. The cupboard grumbled with a groan, "Each new day worse starvation brings. Since he came here, I have not known or sweets, or cates, or wholesome things. But now, a pinch of meal, a crust, throughout the week is all I get. I am so empty. It is just as when they said we were to let." 6. "What is become then of our man?" the petulant old glass exclaimed. "If all this time he's slumber can? He really ought to be ashamed. I wish we had our girl again, so gay and busy, bright and fair. The girls are better than these men, who only for their dull selves care." 7. "It is so many hours ago, the lamp and fire were both alight. I saw him pacing to and fro, perturbably restlessly the night. His face was pale, to give one fear. His eyes, when lifted, looked too bright. He muttered, what, I could not hear. Bad words, though, something was not right." 8. The table said, "He wrote so long that I grew weary of his weight. The pen kept up a cricket song. It ran and ran at such a rate. And in the longer pauses, he with both his folded arms down pressed, and stared as one who does not see, or sank his head upon his breast." 9. The fire grate said,
"I am as cold as if I never had a blaze. The few dead cinders here I hold, I held unburned for days and days. Last night he made them flare, but still, what good did all his writing do? Among my ashes curl and thrill thin ghosts of all those papers too."
10. The table answered, "Not quite all. He saved and folded up one sheet, and sealed it fast and let it fall. And here it lies now white and neat." Whereon the letter's whisper came,
"My writing is closed up too well. Outside there's not a single name, and who should read me I can't tell."
11. The mirror sneered with scornful spite. That ancient crack which spoiled her looks had marred her temper. "Write, and read those stupid, worn-out books. That's all he does. Read, write, and read, and smoke that nasty pipe which stinks. He never takes the slightest heed how any of us feels or thinks." 12. But Lucy, 50 times a day, would come and smile here in my face, adjust a tress that curled astray, or tie a ribbon with more grace. She looked so young and fresh and fair. She blushed with such a charming bloom. It did one good to see her there, and brightened all things in the room. 13. She did not sit hours stark and dumb, as pale as moonshine by the lamp, to lie in bed when day was come, and leave us curtained, chill and damp. She slept away the dreary dark, and rose to greet the pleasant morn, and sang as gaily as a lark, while busy as the flies sunborn. 14. And how she loved us, every one, and dusted this, and mended that, with trills and laughs, and freaks of fun, and tender scoldings in her chat. And then her bird that sang as shrill as she sang sweet, her darling flowers that grew there in the window-sill, where she would sit at work for hours. 15. It was not much she ever wrote. Her fingers had good work to do. Say, once a week, a pretty note, and very long it took her, too. And little more she read, I whiz, just now and then a pictured sheet. Besides those letters, she would kiss and croon for hours. They were so sweet. 16. She had her friends, too, blithe young girls who whispered, babbled, laughed, caressed, and romped and danced with dancing curls, and gave her life a joyous zest. But with this dullard, glum and sour, not one of all his fellow men has ever passed a social hour. We might be in some wild beast's den. 17. This long tirade aroused the bed, who spoke in deep and ponderous bass, befitting that calm life he led, as if firm-rooted in his place. In broad majestic bulk alone, as in thrice venerable age, he stood at once the royal throne, the monarch, the experienced sage. 18. I know what is and what has been. Not anything to me comes strange, who in so many years have seen and lived through every kind of change. I know when men are good or bad, when well or ill, he slowly said, when sad or glad, when sane or mad, and when they sleep alive or dead. 19. At this last word of solemn lore, a tremor circled through the gloom, as if a crash upon the floor had jarred and shaken all the room. For nearly all the listening things were old and worn, and knew what curse of violent change death often brings, from good to bad, from bad to worse. 20. They get to know each other well, to feel at home and settle down. Death bursts among them like a shell, and strews them over all the town. The bed went on. This man who lies upon me now is stark and cold. He will not any more arise and do the things he did of old. 21. But we shall have short peace or rest, for soon up here will come a rout, and nail him in a queer long chest, and carry him like luggage out. They will be muffled all in black, and whisper much, and sigh and weep, but he will never more come back, and someone else in me must sleep. 22. Thereon a little file shrilled. Here empty on the chair I lie. I heard one say, as I was filled, with half of this a man would die. The man there drank me with slow breath, and murmured, thus ends barren strife. O sweeter thou cold wine of death, than ever sweet warm wine of life. 23. One of my cousins, long ago, a little thing, the mirror said, was carried to a couch to show whether a man was really dead. 2 great improvements marked the case. He did not blur her with his breath. His many wrinkled, twitching face was smooth old ivory. Verdict, death. 24. It lay, the lowest thing there, lulled sweet sleep-like in corruption's truce, the form whose purpose was annulled, while all the other shapes meant use. It lay, the he become now it, unconscious of the deep disgrace, unanxious how its parts might flit through what new forms in time and space. 25. It lay and preached as dumb things do, more powerfully than tongues can prate. Though life be torture through and through, man is but weak to plain of fate. The drear path crawls on, drearier still, to wounded feet and hopeless breast? Well, he can lie down when he will, and straight all ends in endless rest. 26. And while the black night nothing saw, until the cold morn came at last, that old bed held the room in awe, with tales of its experience vast. It thrilled the gloom. It told such tales of human sorrow and delights, of fever moans and infant wails, of births and deaths and bridal nights. 1867, 8. End of section 6. Section 7 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 7. A Voice from the Nile. I come from mountains under other stars than those reflected in my waters here. Athwart broad realms, beneath large skies I flow, between the Libyan and Arabian hills, and merge at last into the great mid-sea, and make this land of Egypt. All is mine, the palm trees and the doves among the palms, the cornfields and the flowers among the corn, the patient oxen and the crocodiles, the ibis and the heron and the hawk, the lotus and the thick papyrus reeds, the slant-sailed boats that flit before the wind, or up my rapids ropes hail heavily, yea, even all the massive temple fronts, with all their columns and huge effigies, the pyramids and Memnon and the Sphinx, this Cairo and the city of the Greek as Memphis, and the 100-gated Thebes, Sais and Dendera of Isis queen, have grown because I fed them with full life, and flourish only while I feed them still. For if I stint my fertilizing flood, gaunt famine reaps among the sons of men who have not corn to reap for all they sowed. And blight and languishment are everywhere, and when I have withdrawn or turned aside to other realms my ever-flowing streams, the old realms withered from their old renown. The sands came over them, the desert sands incessantly encroaching, numberless beyond my water drops, and buried them. And all is silence, solitude, and death, exanimate silence, while the waste winds howl over the sad, immeasurable waste. Dusk memories haunt me of an infinite past. Ages and cycles brood above my springs, though I remember not my primal birth. So ancient is my being and august, I know not anything more venerable, unless, perchance, the vaulting skies that hold the sun and moon and stars that shine on me, the air that breathes upon me with delight, and earth, all mother, all beneficent, who held her mountains forth like opulent breasts to cradle me and feed me with their snows, and hollowed out the great sea to receive my overplus of flowing energy. Blessed forever be our Mother Earth. Only the mountains that must feed my springs year after year, and every year with snows as they have fed innumerable years, these mountains, they are evermore the same, rooted and motionless. The solemn heavens are evermore the same in stable rest. The sun and moon and stars that shine on me are evermore the same, although they move. I solely, moving ever without pause, am evermore the same and not the same, pouring myself away into the sea and self-renewing from the farthest heights, ever fresh waters streaming down and down, the one old Nihilist constant through their change. The creatures also whom I breed and feed perpetually perish and dissolve, and other creatures like them take their place, to perish in their turn and be no more. My profluent waters perish not from life, absorbed into the ever-living sea, whose life is in their full replenishment. Of all these creatures whom I breed and feed, one only with his works is strange to me, is strange and admirable and pitiable, as homeless where all others are at home. My crocodiles are happy in my slime, and bask and seize their prey, each for itself, and leave their eggs to hatch in the hot sun, and die, their lives fulfilled, and are no more, and others bask and prey, and leave their eggs. My doves, they build their nests, each pair its own, and feed their callow young, each pair its own. None serves another, each one serves itself. All glean alike about my fields of grain, and all the nests they build them are alike, and are the selfsame nests they built of old, before the rearing of the pyramids, before great Hecatompolis was reared. Their cooing is the cooing, soft and sweet, that murmured plaintively at evening tide, in pillared Karnak, as its pillars rose, and they are happy, floating through my palms. But man, the admirable, the pitiable, these sad-eyed peoples of the sons of men, are as the children of an alien race planted among my children, not at home, changelings aloof from all my family. The one is servant, and the other lord, and many myriads serve a single lord. So was it when the pyramids were reared, and sphinxes, and huge columns, and wrought stones were hailed long lengthening leagues down my banks by hundreds, groaning with the stress of toil, and groaning under the taskmaster's scourge, with many falling fordone by the way, half starved on lentils, onions, and scant bread. So is it now with these poor fellaheen, to whom my annual bounty brings fierce toil, with scarce enough of food to keep in life. They build mud huts and spacious palaces, and in the huts the moiling millions dwell, and in the palaces their sumptuous lords, pampered with all the choicest things I yield. Most admirable, most pitiable man. Also, their peoples ever are at war, slaying and slain, burning and ravaging, and one yields to another, and they pass, while I flow evermore the same great Nile, the ever young and ever ancient Nile. The swarthy is succeeded by the dusk, the dusky by the pale again by sunburned, turbaned tribes, long linen-robed. And with these changes, all things change and pass, all things, but me, in this old land of mine. Their dwellings, habitudes, and garbs, and tongues, I hear strange voices, never more the voice austere priests chanted to the boat of death, gliding across the Acaresian lake, or satraps parlayed in the Pharaoh's halls. Never the voice of mad Cambius's hosts, never the voice of Alexander's Greece, never the voice of Caesar's haughty Rome. And with the people and the languages, and with the great empires, still the great creeds change. They shift, they change, they vanish like thin dreams, as unsubstantial as the mists that rise after my overflow from out my fields. In silver fleeces, golden volumes rise and melt away before the mounting sun, while I flow onward, solely permanent amidst their swiftly passing pageantry. Poor men, most admirable, most pitiable, with all their changes, all their great creeds change. For man, this alien in my family, is alien most in this, to cherish dreams and brood on visions of eternity, and build religions in his brooding brain and in the dark depths awful of his soul. My other children live their little lives, are born and reach their prime and slowly fail, and all their little lives are self-fulfilled. They die and are no more, content with age and weary with infirmity. But man has fear and hope and fantasy and awe and wistful yearnings and unsated loves that strain beyond the limits of his life, and therefore gods and demons, heaven and hell. This man, the admirable, the pitiable. Lo, I look backward some few thousand years and see men hewing temples in my rocks, with seated forms, gigantic fronting them, and solemn labyrinthine catacombs, with tombs all pictured with fair scenes of life and scenes and symbols of mysterious death, and planting avenues of sphinxes forth, sphinxes couched calm, whose passionless regard sets timeless riddles to bewildered time. Forth from my sacred banks to other fanes islanded in the boundless sea of air, upon whose walls and colonnades are carved tremendous hieroglyphs of secret things. I see embalming of the bodies dead and judging of the disembodied souls. I see the sacred animals alive, and statues of the various headed gods, among them throned a woman and a babe, the goddess crescent-horned, the babe divine. Then I flow forward some few thousand years and see new temples shining with all grace, whose sculptured gods are beautiful human forms. Then I flow forward not 1,000 years, and see again a woman and a babe, the woman hallowed and the babe divine. and everywhere. That symbol of the cross I knew aforetime in the ancient days, the emblem then of life, but now of death. Then I flow forward some few hundred years and see again the crescent, now supreme on lofty cupolas and minarets, whence voices sweet and solemn call to prayer. So the men change along my changeless stream, and change their faiths, but I yield all alike sweet water for their drinking, sweet as wine, and pure sweet water for their lustral rites. For 30 generations of my corn outlast a generation of my men, and 30 generations of my men outlast a generation of their gods. O admirable, pitiable man, my child, yet alien in my family. And through all these generations, flow of corn and men and gods, all bountiful, perennial, through their transientness, still fed by earth with waters in abundancy. And as I flowed here long before they were, so may I flow when they no longer are, most like the serpent of eternity. Blessed forever be our Mother Earth. November 1881. End of section 7. Section 8 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 8. The Poet and His Muse. I sighed unto my muse, O gentle muse, would you but come and kiss my aching brow, and thus a little life and joy infuse into my brain and heart, so weary now, into my heart, so sad with emptiness, even when unafflicted by the stress of all our kind's poor life, into my brain, so feeble and so listless, crushed down by burthens of dark thought, resistless of all our want and woe and unresulting strife. Would you but come and kiss me on the brow? Would you but kiss me on the pallid lips that have so many years been songless now, and on the eyes involved in dreary clips, that thus the barren brain, long overwrought, might yield again some blossoms of glad thought, and the long mute lips sing, and the long arid eyes grow moist and tender with some new vision of the ancient splendor of beauty and delight that lives in everything. Would you but kiss me on the silent lips, and teach them thus to sing some new sweet song? Would you but kiss my eyes from their eclipse with some new tale of old world right and wrong, some song of love and joy, or tender grief whose sweetness is its own divine relief, whose joy is golden bliss, some solemn and impassioned antique story where love against dark doom burns out in glory, where life is freely staked to win one mutual kiss. Would you but sing to me some new dear song of love in bliss, or Baal alike supreme? Some story of our old world, right and wrong with noble passion, burning through the theme. What, though the story be of darkest doom, if loyal spirits shining through its gloom throb to us from afar? What, though the song with heavy sorrows languish, if loving hearts pulse to us through its anguish? Is not the whole black night enriched by one pure star? And lo, she came, the ever-gentle muse, sad as my heart and languid as my brain, too gentle in her loving to refuse, although her steps were weariness and pain, although her eyes were blank and lusterless, although her form was clothed with heaviness and drooped beneath the weight, although her lips were blanched from all their blooming, her pure face pallid as from long entombing, her bright regard and smile somber and desolate. Sad is thy heart, and languid as thy brain. I come unto thy sighing through the gloom. I come with mortal weariness and pain. I come as one compelled to leave her tomb. Behold, am I not wrapped as in the cloud of death's investiture and somber shroud? Am I not wan as death? Look at the withered leafage of my garland. Is it not nightshade from the sad, dim, far land of night and old oblivion and no mortal breath? I come unto thy sighing through the gloom, my heart disheveled dank with dews of night, reluctantly constrained to leave my tomb, with eyes that have forever lost their light, my vesture mouldering with deep death's disgrace. My heart is chill and bloodless as my face, my forehead like a stone, my spirit sightless as my eyes are sightless, my inmost being nerveless, soulless, lightless, my joyous singing voice a harsh sepulchral moan, my hair disheveled, dank with dews of night. From that far region of dim death I come, with eyes and soul and spirit void of light, with lips more sad in speech than stark and dumb. Lo, you have ravaged me with dolorous thought until my brain was wholly overwrought, barren of flowers and fruit, until my heart was bloodless for all passion, until my trembling lips could no more fashion sweet words to fit sweet airs of trembling lyre and lute. From the sad regions of dim death I come. We tell no tales there, for our tale is told. We sing no songs there, for our lips are dumb. Likewise, our hearts and brains are graveyard mold. No wreaths of laurel, myrtle, ivy, or vine about our pale and pulseless brows entwine, and that sad frustrate realm nor amaranths nor asphodels can nourish. But aconite and the black red poppies flourish on such Lethean dews as fair life overwhelm. We tell no tales more, we whose tale is told, as your brain withered and your heart grew chill, my heart and brain were turned to churchyard mold. Wherefore my singing voice sank ever still, and I, all heart and brain and voice, am dead. It is my phantom here beside your bed that speaketh to you now, though you exist still, a mere form, inurning the ashes of dead fires of thought and yearning, dead faith, dead love, dead hope, in hollow breast and brow. When it had moaned these words of hopeless doom, the phantom of the Muse, once young and fair, pallid and dim from its disastrous tomb, of her so sweet and young and debonair, so rich of heart and brain and singing voice, so quick to shed sweet tears and to rejoice and smile with ravishing grace, my soul was stupefied by its own reaping, then burst into a flood of passionate weeping, tears bitter as black blood streaming adown my face. O Muse, so young and sweet and glad and fair, O Muse of hope and faith and joy and love, O Muse so gracious and so debonair, darling of earth beneath and heaven above, if thou art gone into oblivious death, why should I still prolong my painful breath? Why still exist, the urn holding of once great fires the long dead ashes? No soul spark left of all their glow and flashes, fires never to rekindle more and shine and burn. O Muse of hope and faith and joy and love, soul of my soul, if thou in truth art dead, a mournful alien in our world above, a phantom moaning by my midnight bed, how can I be alive? A hollow form with ashes of dead fires once bright and warm, what thing is worth my strife? The past is a great regret, the present sterile, the future hopeless, with the further peril of withering down and down to utter death in life. Soul of my soul, canst thou indeed be dead? What mean for me if I accept their lore? Thy words, O phantom, moaning by my bed, I cannot sing again for evermore? I nevermore can think or feel or dream or hope or love the fatal loss supreme. I am a soulless clod, no germ of life within me that surpasses the little germs of weeds and flowers and grasses wherewith our liberal mother decks the graveyard sod. I am half turpid, yet I spurn this lore. I am long silent, yet cannot avow my singing voice is lost for evermore. For lo, this beating heart, this burning brow, this spirit gasping in keen spasms of dread and fierce revulsion that it is not dead. The agony of the sting. What soulless clod could have these tears and sobbing? These terrors that are hopes, these passionate throbbings. Dear Muse, revive. We yet may dream and love and sing. February 1882. End of section 8. Section 9 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 9. Mater Tenebrarum. 1. In the endless nights from my bed, where sleepless in anguish I lie, I startle the stillness and gloom with a bitter and strong cry. O love, O beloved long lost, come down from thy heaven above, for my heart is wasting and dying in uttermost famine for love. Come down for a moment, oh come, come, serious and mild and pale, as thou wert on this earth, thou adorable child, or come as thou art, with thy sanctitude, triumph, and bliss, for a garment of glory about thee, and give me one kiss, one tender and pitying look of thy tenderest eyes, one word of solemn assurance and truth that the soul with its love never dies. 2. In the endless nights from my bed, where sleepless in frenzy I lie, I cleave through the crushing gloom with a bitter and deadly cry. Oh, where have they taken my love from our Eden of bliss on this earth, which now is a frozen waste of sepulchral and horrible dearth? Have they killed her indeed? Is her soul as her body, which long has mouldered away in the dust where the foul worms throng? Oh, what abhorrent leaths to that remotest star! Is she wrapped away from my pursuit through cycles and systems far? She is dead! She is utterly dead! For her life would hear and speed to the wild imploring cry of my heart that cries in its dreadful need. 3. In the endless nights on my bed, where sleeplessly brooding I lie, I burden the heavy gloom with a bitter and weary sigh. No hope in this worn-out world. No hope beyond the tomb. No living and loving God, but blind and stony doom. Anguish and grief and sin. Terror, disease, and despair. Why throw not off this life, this garment of torture I wear, and go down to sleep in the grave in everlasting rest? What keeps me yet in this life? What spark in my frozen breast? A fire of dread, a light of hope, kindled, O love, by thee, for thy pure and gentle and beautiful soul, it must immortal be. 1859. End of section 9. Section 10 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 10. L'Ancien Régime, or The Good Old Rule. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King, our King all kings above? A young girl brought him love, and he dowered her with shame, with a sort of infamous fame, and then with lonely years of penance and bitter tears. Love is scarcely the thing to bring as a gift for our King. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King? A statesman brought him planned justice for all the land, and he in recompense got fierce struggle with brig and plot, then a fall from lofty place into exile and disgrace. Justice is never the thing to bring as a gift for our King. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King? A writer brought him truth, and first he imprisoned the youth, and then he bestowed a free pyre, that the works might have plenty of fire, and also to cure the pain of the headache called thought in the brain. Truth is a very bad thing to bring as a gift for our King. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King? The people brought their sure loyalty, fervid and pure, and he gave them bountiful spoil of taxes and hunger and toil, ignorance, brutish plight, and wholesale slaughter and fight. Loyalty's quite the worst thing to bring as a gift for our King. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King? A courtier brought to his feet servility, graceful and sweet, with an ever-ready smile and an ever-supple guile, and he got in reward the place of the statesman in disgrace. Servility's always a thing to bring as a gift for our King. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our Lord the King? A soldier brought him war, la gloire, la victoire, ravage and carnage and groans, for the pious Te Deum tones. And he got, in return for himself, rank and honors and pelf. War is a very fine thing to bring as a gift for our king. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our lord the king? A harlot brought him her flesh, her lusts, and the manifold mesh of her wiles intervolved with caprice. And he gave her his realm to fleece, to corrupt, to ruin, and gave himself for her toy and her slave. Harlotry's just the thing to bring as a gift for our king. Who has a thing to bring for a gift to our lord the king, our king who fears to die? A priest brought him a lie, the blackness of hell uprolled in heaven's shining gold. And he got, as guerdon for that, a sea and a cardinal's hat. A lie is an excellent thing to bring as a gift for our king. Has anyone yet a thing for a gift to our lord the king? The country gave him a tomb, a magnificent sleeping room, and for this it obtained some rest, clear riddance of many a pest, and a hope which it much enjoyed, that the throne would continue void. A tomb is the very best thing for a gift to our lord the king. 1867. End of section 10. Section 11 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 11. The Sleeper. The fire is in a steadfast glow, the curtains drawn against the night. Upon the red couch, soft and low, between the fire and lamp alight, she rests, half sitting, half reclining, encompassed by the cozy shining, her ruby dress with lace trimmed white. Her left hand shades her drooping eyes against the fervor of the fire. The right, upon her cincture, lies in languid grace beyond desire. A lily fallen among roses, so placidly her form reposes, it scarcely seemeth to respire. She is not surely all awake. As yet she is not all asleep. The eyes with lids half open take a startled, deprecating peep of quivering drowsiness. Then slowly the lids sink back before she wholly resigns herself to slumber deep. The side neck gleams so pure beneath the underfringe of gossamer, the tendrils of whose fairy wreath the softest sigh suppressed would stir. The little pink shell ear rim flushes with her young blood's translucent blushes, nestling in tresses, warm as fur. The contour of her cheek and chin is curved in one delicious line, pure as a vase of porcelain thin, through which a tender light may shine. Her brow and blue-veined temple, gleaming beneath the dusk of hair back streaming, are as a virgin's marble shrine. The ear is burning crimson fire. The flush is brightening on the face. The lips are parting to suspire. The hair grows restless in its place, as if itself new tangles wreathing. The bosom with her deeper breathing swells and subsides with ravishing grace. The hand slides softly to caress, unconscious, that fine penciled curve, her lips' contour and downiness, unbending with a sweet reserve. A tender darkness that abashes steals out beneath the long dark lashes, whose sightless eyes make eyesight swerve. The hand on chin and throat down slips, then softly, softly on her breast, a dream comes fluttering o'er the lips, and stirs the eyelids in their rest, and makes their undershadows quiver, and like a ripple on a river, glides through her breathing, manifest. I feel in awe to read this dream so clearly written in her smile. A pleasant, not a passionate theme, a little love, a little guile. I fear lest she should speak, revealing the secret of some maiden feeling I have no right to hear the while. The dream has passed without a word of all that hovered finely traced. The hand has slipped down, gently stirred to join the other at her waist. Her breath from that light agitation has settled to its slow pulsation. She is by deep sleep re-embraced. Deep sleep, so holy in its calm, so helpless, yet so awful too, whose silence sheds as sweet a balm as ever sweetest voice could do, whose tranced eyes, unseen, unseeing, shadowed by pure love, thrill our being with tender yearnings through and through. Sweet sleep, no hope, no fear, no strife. The solemn sanctity of death, with all the loveliest bloom of life. Eternal peace in mortal breath. Pure sleep, from which she will awaken refreshed as one who hath partaken new strength, new hope, new love, new faith. January 1882. End of section 11. Section 12 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 12. On a broken pipe. Neglected now, it lies a cold clay form, so late with living inspirations warm, type of all other creatures formed of clay. What more than it for epitaph have they? End of section 12. Section 13 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 13. Day. Waking one morning in a pleasant land, by a river flowing over golden sand. Whence flow ye waters o'er your golden sand? We come flowing from the silent land. Whither flow ye waters o'er your golden sand? We go flowing to the silent land. And what is this fair realm? A grain of golden sand in the great darkness of the silent land. 1866. End of section 13. Section 14 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 14. Night. He cried out through the night, "Where's the light? Shall never more open heaven's door? Oh, I am left, lonely, bereft!" He cried out through the night. It spread vaguely white, with its ghost of a moon above the dark swoon of the earth lying chill, breathless, grave still. He cried out through the night. His voice, in its might, rang forth far and far, and then, like a star, dwindled from sense in the immense. He cried out through the night. No answering light, no syllabled sound. Beneath and around, a long, shuddering thrill. Then all again, still. 1864. End of section 14. Section 15 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 15. William Blake. He came to the desert of London town, grey miles long. He wandered up and he wandered down, singing a quiet song. He came to the desert of London town, murk miles broad. He wandered up and he wandered down, ever alone with God. There were thousands and thousands of humankind in this desert of brick and stone, but some were deaf and some were blind, and he was there alone. At length the good hour came. He died as he had lived, alone. He was not missed from the desert wide. Perhaps he was found at the throne. 1866. End of section 15. Section 16 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 16. E.B.B. The white rose garland at her feet, the crown of laurel at her head, her noble life on earth complete, lay her in the last low bed, for the slumber calm and deep he giveth his beloved sleep. Soldiers find their fittest grave in the field whereon they died. So her spirit, pure and brave, leaves the clay it glorified to the land for which she fought with such grand impassioned thought. Keats and Shelley sleep at Rome. She in well-loved Tuscan earth, finding all their deaths long home, far from their old home of birth. Italy, you hold in trust very sacred English dust. Therefore, this one prayer I breathe, that you yet may worthy prove of the heirlooms they bequeath, who have loved you with such love. Fairest land, while land of slaves, yields their free souls no fit graves. 1861. End of section 16. Section 17 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 17. The Fire That Filled My Heart of Old. 1. The fire that filled my heart of old gave luster while it burned. Now only ashes gray and cold are in its silence earned. Ah! Better was the furious flame, the splendor with the smart. I never cared for the singer's fame, but oh, for the singer's heart once more, the burning, fulgent heart. 2. No love, no hate, no hope, no fear, no anguish, and no mirth. Thus life extends from year to year, a flat of sullen dearth. Ah! Life's blood creepeth cold and tame. Life's thought plays no new part. I never cared for the singer's fame, but oh, for the singer's heart once more, the bleeding, passionate heart. 1864. End of section 17. Section 18 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 18. Song. The nightingale was not yet heard, for the rose was not yet blown. His heart was quiet, as a bird asleep in the night alone, and never were its pulses stirred to breathe, or joy, or moan. The nightingale was not yet heard, for the rose was not yet blown. Then she bloomed forth before his sight in passion and in power, and filled the very day with light, so glorious was her dower, and made the whole vast moonlit night as fragrant as a bower. The young, the beautiful, the bright, the splendid, peerless flower, whereon his heart was like a bird when summer mounts his throne, and all its pulses thrilled and stirred to songs of joy and moan, to every most impassioned word and most impassioned tone. The nightingale at length was heard, for the rose at length was blown. February 1877. End of section 18. Section 19 of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 19. A Requiem. Thou hast lived in pain and woe, thou hast lived in grief and fear. Now thine heart can dread no blow, now thine eyes can shed no tear. Storms round us shall beat and rave, thou art sheltered in the grave. Thou, for long, long years, hast borne, bleeding through life's wilderness, heavy loss and wounding scorn. Now thine heart is burdenless. Vainly rest for hours we crave. Thine is quiet in the grave. We must toil with pain and care. We must front tremendous fate. We must fight with dark despair. Thou dost dwell in solemn state, couched triumphant, calm and brave, in the ever holy grave. 1858. End of section 19. Read by MoonLylith. End of The City of Dreadful Night and Other Poems by James Thomson.